In the world of piracy, battles weren't just about treasure or glory, they were about survival, vengeance, and power. The most infamous pirate battles in history were marked by bloodshed and brutality, with fierce confrontations that turned the seas into graveyards. From swashbuckling duels to large-scale naval clashes, these wars between pirates and empires shaped the course of maritime history. But what happened when these pirates, once kings of the sea, met their bloody ends in battle? Let's dive into the most infamous pirate battles and the blood-soaked consequences they left behind. The rise of pirate battles. Pirate battles have shaped the history of the high seas, where legendary conflicts between pirates and naval forces erupted with violence and brutality. These infamous pirate battles, filled with blood and betrayal, weren't just about treasure. They were about survival, dominance, and power. The most notable pirate battles throughout history became defining moments, often leading to the gruesome demise of the pirates themselves. Let's take a closer look at some of the most bloody and consequential pirate battles that made their mark on history. The Battle of Nassau, 1718. The Battle of Nassau, fought in 1718, was one of the first major battles that pitted pirates against the British Navy during the golden age of piracy. Nassau, a small island in the Bahamas, was a sanctuary for pirates. Led by the likes of Blackbeard and Charles Vane, Nassau became a pirate stronghold, an oasis where pirates could rest, resupply, and repair their ships. This pirate haven became a thorn in the side of the British Navy, who were determined to rid the Caribbean of piracy. In 1718, the British Navy, under the command of Captain Henry Jennings, launched a campaign to capture Nassau and eliminate the pirate threat. The pirates, led by Charles Vane, were determined to defend their haven. A violent battle ensued, with the British Navy firing cannonballs and pirates retaliating with their own weapons. The battle was intense, but the superior naval firepower of the British fleet ultimately overpowered the pirates. As a result, Nassau fell into British hands. The pirates were defeated, and many of the pirate leaders, including Charles Vane, were either captured or forced to flee. This battle marked the beginning of the British Navy's aggressive campaign against piracy in the Caribbean, setting the stage for the eventual downfall of many pirate strongholds. Blackbeard's final battle, 1718. Perhaps one of the most famous pirate battles in history was between Blackbeard, the notorious pirate, and the British Navy. Blackbeard, whose real name was Edward Teach, had terrorized the waters off the eastern coast of the American colonies and the Caribbean for years. Known for his fierce demeanor, his long black beard, and his intimidating appearance, Blackbeard had become a legend. His ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was heavily armed and manned by a ruthless crew. In 1718, Blackbeard found himself in a fierce battle with the British Navy. The British, led by Lieutenant Robert Maynard, had been pursuing Blackbeard for some time, determined to put an end to his reign of terror. The battle occurred near Ocracoke Island, off the coast of North Carolina. Despite being outnumbered, Blackbeard fought fiercely, with his crew engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat and exchanging cannon fire with the British. The battle was one of the most vicious of its time. Blackbeard was shot multiple times but continued to fight, displaying incredible resilience and fearlessness. However, in the end, the British Navy overwhelmed him. Blackbeard was killed, his head severed from his body. His body was thrown into the sea, but even in death, Blackbeard's legacy lived on. His severed head was displayed as a trophy, hung from the bowsprit of Lieutenant Maynard's ship, a symbol of the British Navy's victory over one of the most feared pirates to ever sail the seas. The Battle of St. Augustine, 1728. In 1728, the infamous pirate Stede Bonnet, known as the Gentleman Pirate, clashed with the Spanish Navy in the Battle of St. Augustine off the coast of Florida. Bonnet, once a landowner, had turned to piracy, and his ship, the Ranger, had become a feared vessel in the Caribbean. However, Bonnet's career as a pirate was marred by his inexperience and poor decision-making. The Spanish Navy, recognizing the threat posed by Bonnet, set out to capture or destroy the Ranger. The battle that ensued was brutal. Bonnet and his crew fought fiercely against the Spanish fleet, exchanging cannon fire and engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Despite their efforts, the pirates were ultimately outmatched by the better-trained and better-equipped Spanish sailors. Bonnet was captured, and after a brief trial, he was sentenced to hang. His execution was one of the most infamous pirate executions of the time, as Bonnet, despite his aristocratic background, faced the same fate as the lowliest pirate. His capture and execution marked the end of his pirating career and became a cautionary tale for pirates across the seas. The death of Captain Kidd, 1701. Captain William Kidd was initially a privateer given a commission by the British government to hunt down pirates. However, Kidd eventually turned to piracy himself, and his most famous battle occurred in 1698 when he was accused of plundering a ship under the British flag. Kidd's eventual capture and trial became one of the most sensationalized pirate stories in history. In 1701, after years of evading capture, Captain Kidd was arrested in New York and sent to London to stand trial. Kidd's defense was that he had been acting under orders from the British government, but the courts didn't buy it. He was found guilty of piracy and murder, and in 1701, Captain Kidd was hanged at Execution Dock in Wapping, London. The execution was a public spectacle, drawing crowds from all over the city. His body was left to hang for an extended period, a common practice to ensure that the pirate's death was as humiliating as possible. Kidd's body was then gibbeted, put into a metal cage and displayed publicly as a grim reminder of the consequences of piracy. Consequences of pirate battles. Pirate battles were not just about the loss of life. They were about sending a message. The British Navy, for example, didn't just want to kill pirates. They wanted to make examples of them. Pirates were often publicly humiliated and tortured before their executions. Hanging, being one of the most common forms of execution, was often followed by the public display of the pirate's body, sometimes in a gibbet, to show the world the fate of those who turned to piracy. The consequences of pirate battles went beyond the pirates themselves. They served to instill fear in the population and to deter any would-be pirates from following in their footsteps. The bloody consequences of these battles and the horrific executions that followed made it clear piracy would not be tolerated. The end of the pirate era. The Battle of the Gulf of Mexico, Bartholomew Roberts versus the British Navy, 1722. One of the most infamous pirate battles occurred in 1722, when Bartholomew Roberts, also known as Black Bart, faced off against the British Navy off the coast of West Africa. Roberts, who was one of the most successful pirates in history, had captured over 400 ships during his reign of terror. But his career came to a bloody end in a fierce battle against the British Navy. Roberts' ship, the Royal Fortune, was heavily armed and well-manned, and Roberts himself was a skilled strategist. However, the British Navy, led by Captain Challoner Ogle, had superior firepower and a larger crew. The battle was intense, with both sides exchanging heavy cannon fire and engaging in brutal boarding actions. Despite Roberts' fierce resistance, he was shot in the chest during the fight and fell to the deck of his ship. His crew, although determined to continue fighting, was forced to surrender when Roberts died. The consequences of this battle were devastating for piracy. With Roberts' death, one of the most feared and successful pirates in history was gone, and the British Navy dealt a significant blow to pirate activity in the region. Roberts's body was thrown overboard, and his death signaled the end of the pirates' golden age, as his capture and execution marked the decline of piracy in the Caribbean and West Africa. The Battle of Barbary Coast. The end of the pirate kingdoms. Another infamous pirate battle that had bloody consequences took place on the Barbary coast, where the Barbary pirates of North Africa waged war against European and American naval forces. These pirates, operating out of cities like Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, had been a constant menace to the Mediterranean for centuries, capturing ships, enslaving sailors, and demanding ransoms. The Battle of the Barbary Coast was not one single battle, but a series of confrontations that resulted in the eventual defeat of the Barbary pirates. In 1815, after the United States faced repeated attacks from the Barbary pirates, President Thomas Jefferson ordered a military intervention. The United States, joined by European nations, launched a series of attacks against the pirate strongholds along the Barbary coast. The pirate fleets were overwhelmed by the combined European and American forces. After months of fighting, the pirates were defeated, and their strongholds were dismantled. The consequences of these battles were dire for the Barbary pirates. Their powerful empire crumbled, and the piracy that had once thrived along the coast of North Africa was wiped out. The defeat of the Barbary pirates marked the end of the golden age of piracy in the Mediterranean and the beginning of a new era of naval control over the seas. The pirates who survived the conflict were either captured or driven into hiding, and their once great pirate fleets were no more. The Battle of the Caribbean, the end of the pirate republic. By the mid-18th century, the pirate strongholds in the Caribbean were beginning to fade. The pirate Republic of Nassau had already been captured by the British, and many pirate leaders were either dead, imprisoned, or fleeing to the most remote corners of the world. However, the Caribbean remained a pirate haven for some time, with pirates like Calico Jack Rackham continuing to raid merchant vessels. The final battle that marked the end of piracy in the Caribbean occurred in 1720 when Captain Charles Vane, one of the most notorious pirates of his time, engaged in a final stand against the British Navy. Vane, who had been a significant figure in the pirate community, had made a name for himself by attacking British ships and eluding capture. But in 1720, after a fierce battle, Vane was captured and his crew was defeated. The British Navy, under the leadership of Captain Benjamin Horatio, had the upper hand. Vane's ship was overtaken, and many of his crew members were captured or killed. Vane himself was taken prisoner and brought to trial. He was eventually hanged for piracy, and his death marked the end of an era. His execution served as a stark reminder that no pirate, no matter how feared, could escape the might of the British Navy. The execution of pirate kings, how the British Navy ended the pirate reign pirates, were often executed in the most brutal ways, not just to punish them, but to send a clear message to others who might be tempted to follow in their footsteps. After the infamous pirate battles, pirates were typically captured, put on trial, and sentenced to death. The British Navy and other empires made sure that these executions were public, intended to instill fear in the remaining pirate crews. Pirates like Blackbeard, Stade Bonny, and Calico Jack Rackham faced brutal public executions. Hanging was the most common method of execution, and after pirates were hanged, their bodies were often left to swing in the wind as a warning to all who might consider piracy. In some cases, pirates were gibbeted, placed in iron cages and hung from posts in public spaces, their bodies left to rot. This grotesque display of justice served as a chilling reminder that piracy would never be tolerated. Even after the deaths of these pirate kings, piracy continued to decline. The British Navy's ruthless tactics, combined with the growing strength of European navies, finally eradicated the pirate threat in the Caribbean and along the coasts of Africa and North America. The legacy of pirate battles, the end of the golden age of piracy. The most infamous pirate battles and their bloody consequences marked the end of an era. Piracy, once a thriving industry of chaos and rebellion, was slowly eradicated by the might of naval powers like Britain, Spain, and the United States. The final stand of pirates in battles across the seas resulted in the capture, execution, or flight of pirate leaders. Their gruesome executions and public displays ensured that piracy would no longer be the force it once was. The consequences of these battles went far beyond the pirates who died. They signaled the end of the golden age of piracy and the rise of naval dominance. Today, pirates are remembered as figures of myth and legend, their battles and bloody deaths a symbol of rebellion and chaos on the high seas.